Now comes the time of year when I am reminded how we are all going to have to mother each other. If a mother is the one who says yes to loving you, even if the world says no. If a mother is the one who holds us when we have no fight left. If the mother is the one who unclenches our fists and lifts our chin. We are all going to have to mother each other now. Did you know in the United States, the origins of this official holiday go back to 1870, when Julia Ward Howe, a Unitarian and an abolitionist, best remembered as the poet who wrote Battle Hymn of the Republic, worked to establish a Mother's Peace Day. Julia Ward Howe dedicated the celebration of Mother's Peace Day to the eradication of war and organized festivities in Boston for years after that first Mother's Day in 1870. Something in her Mother's Day proclamation, while it rings harshly true today, almost 150 years later. Arise, all women who have hearts, whether your baptism be that of water or tears, she wrote. Say firmly, we will not have great questions decided by irrelevant agencies. Our husbands shall not come to us reeking with carnage for caresses and applause. Ooh. Our sons shall not be taken from us to unlearn all that we have been able to teach them of charity, of mercy, and patience. We, women of one country, we will be too tender of those of another country to allow our sons to be trained to injure theirs. This is what she wrote. From the bosom of the devastated earth, a voice goes up with our own. It says, disarm, disarm. The sword is not the balance of justice. Blood does not wipe out dishonor, nor violence indicate possession. This is the origin of Mother's Day. I have goosebumps right now. In the name of womanhood and of humanity, she proclaimed, I earnestly ask that a general Congress of women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held at the earliest period to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, the great and general interests of peace. That's Mother's Day. 150 years later, we are still waiting for this General International Congress of Women. We are still waiting while men of irrelevant agencies make decisions over our bodily autonomy. Can I get an amen? I'm hearing some. Criminalizing our self-determination to have agency over our bodies. This Mother's Peace Day quickly became subverted by capitalist powers that would have us solve the issue of warfare, international warfare, and other atrocities with a nice brunch or a bouquet of flowers or candy. Now, don't get me wrong. Celebrating the work of mothers, the work of motherhood, is a worthy exercise, yes. I have already been chastised by some, brunch lovers. Brunch is okay. I sent flowers to my mother, too. But so much of mother's work happens out of a place of degradation, out of isolation, and a system that criminalizes mothers for providing safety and security for their children, even when that very same system is the threat to those children. To mother another person is to scrape and scrabble for a way through powerlessness. It's filling out forms and meeting with social workers and teachers and guidance counselors and advocating on your child's behalf. And still, it's not enough to get them to the precise care they need. It's crossing the borderland for months with your child on your back and arriving at the land you thought was promised and free, only to be ripped from that child in the name of government intolerance. And it's struggling with addiction or poverty, sometimes resulting in being jailed away from your children, with no one left to raise them. Journalist Selena Hill reminds us, while many people plan to spend Mother's Day honoring the women who've raised them and had a positive effect in their lives, millions of African American women will spend the day sitting behind bars, not because they've been convicted of a crime, but because they cannot afford to bail themselves out of jail as they await trial. Each day, about 700,000 people are crammed into local jails across the country, while the mass majority are held in custody simply because they don't have the money to post bail. As a result, the U.S. jail system is overpopulated with mostly Black, brown, and poor people who have committed low-level, non-violent offenses. Of the 2,200,000 women currently locked up, 60% are being held in jail pre-trial, 80% are mothers, and 60% are African American. While spending time in jail can place a heavy burden on anyone who is detained, it can be especially costly for mothers who risk losing their jobs, homes, and children. And we know usually this is not what is best. To help remedy this epidemic, the National Bailout Collective is raising money to reunite incarcerated mothers with their children in time for Mother's Day. The organization, which consists of Black organizers and lawyers, is also calling for an end to the cash bail system and mass incarceration altogether. Amen. Many of us, some of us, have a story of incarceration in our own histories or our own families. Some of these family stories carry deep shame or just confusion at how to talk about it. It's not something we talk about much. It was 1990 when I first visited someone in prison. Now, I'm not talking about jail, and I'm really not even talking about poverty at this point, but this is my personal experience with the long incarceration of a mother kept from her child for 22 years. I was 10 years old when I went on a family trip to visit my parents' dear friend, Kathy Boudin, who was imprisoned in Bedford Hills Correctional Facility for 22 years for her role in the infamously violent Brinks armored truck robbery in 1981 in Nyack, New York, when she was part of a leftist radical group, the Weather Underground. My parents were roommates and close friends with Kathy and others years earlier when they all worked together in Chicago and Cleveland, community organizing with the Students for a Democratic Society. This group of friends and activists, well, they splintered when some of them took a more revolutionary stance to eradicating poverty and civil rights violations, and the bank robberies were part of a sort of Robin Hood philosophy. My parents went a different direction, but they all remained friends. I remember the strikingly beautiful mountains, that northern Appalachian scenery on a clear July day in upstate New York. I remember driving around the curve to see the high barbed wire cutting into the blue horizon. I was 10 years old. I was scared, holding my own mother's hand as we were frisked and processed, each of us, through creaky metal gates with bars and ominous spiraling layers as we moved inward towards the center of the facility where Kathy would be in the waiting room. My parents cried a little bit when we finally saw her, and though I had never met Kathy before that moment, she was instantly warm, clearly brilliant. She was a little rough, bright-eyed, and a bit manic to learn as much about us as possible in the 45 minutes we had together. Somewhere, we still have the Polaroid family photo we took together that day, and at first glance, We could have been anywhere. We could have been at a vacation house together in New Jersey, which is where we would have been if things had gone differently. But it wasn't just Kathy's intensity or the pressure to know her that I would remember from that prison visit. It was every single other table having their visit in the waiting room, in the visiting center. Besides us, every other woman was being visited by her children. It was difficult to focus, actually, with the sounds of crying mothers who were seeing their children for a few precious moments. I saw children and teens, some my age, looking detached, scared, full to the brim of pressure to make this a big moment. Now, Kathy had been busy in prison. Along with other women inmates and collaborators, she launched 5 major programs at Bedford Hills while she served her time. She started the teen program, supporting teens and preteens whose mothers were incarcerated, strengthening the mother-child bond during their separation, helping the teens become positive, healthy young adults. She launched the parent education program, helping inmate mothers learn to be responsible parents to preschoolers, grade school, and teenage children while being separated by prison. Kathy also started the adult literacy program, which used an innovative curriculum that she wrote, was an outgrowth of the work she did while she was getting her master's degree in adult education, earned while at Bedford Hills. She started the AIDS and Women's Health program, the first peer community health program devoted to AIDS among prisoners. And she also organized the college program, providing courses and degrees to incarcerated women. Kathy Boudin helped organize a consortium of private colleges to offer this program after New York State cut all public funding for higher education in prisons. And finally, she co-authored the Foster Care Handbook for Incarcerated Parents, published by Bedford Hills in 1993, and she co-edited Parenting from the Inside Out, Voices of Mothers in Prison, jointly published by the Correctional Institutions and the Osborne Foundation. See, this is not a story of poverty. It is a story of one mother's incarceration. Her son, Chesa, my age exactly, was 1.5 years old at the time of the robbery. Kathy and her husband had dropped him off with a sitter that day. He wouldn't see his mother again outside of a prison until he was 24 years old. Chesa was adopted by our mutual friends in Chicago, other members of the Weather Underground. Kathy and her husband, who is also incarcerated, still today with a 75-year life sentence for the same crime, well, they wrote to Chesa every single day, but he was raised by someone else. See, remember, I told you this is a story about incarceration, but not poverty. In fact, in some ways, it is a story of how much wealth and privilege can affect the outcome of a mother's incarceration. See, Chesa struggled for a long time as a kid, and I remember those days, but he eventually thrived, went to Yale. He won a Rhodes Scholarship and went to Oxford. Today, Chesa Boudin is running for district attorney in San Francisco, where he recently helped upend California's cash bail system, which was widely seen as inequitable to people of color and to the poor. Because of his personal history, restorative justice and forgiveness, he says, are major parts of his philosophy around criminal justice. I ran into Kathy again years later. I saw her a lot after she was paroled. But years later, I did run into her on the New York City subway. We were both on our way to Columbia University, where I was studying and where she was teaching and teaches now in the School of Social Work. There is no making up for the lost years together, the lost time. But Kathy used her time to make life better and more manageable for other incarcerated mamas. And now, Chesa is using his experience of his incarcerated mother to try and keep San Francisco safe and also kind, and to create a more humanizing justice system. When I say we are all going to have to mother each other, What I mean is we are all going to have to make the world safer for more people in our community, not just our children or our friends' children. I mean, we are going to have to scrape and advocate and make a way out of no way, because that is what mothers do. Unitarian Universalists across the country are joining up with Southerners on New Ground and the campaign of the Black Mama Bailout to try and bail out as many jailed mamas as possible in time for Mother's Day. And in fact, they also have watch parties to watch as mothers leave the jail and are united with their children. I have contributed financially to this year's Black Mamas Bailout in Atlanta, and I hope my contribution made it possible for at least one mother to spend Mother's Day with her children this weekend. It's not enough, but it's something. Other UU congregations, such as the UU Congregation of Asheville, well, they offer a jail ministry where congregants go to the local jail and hold a book study and a support group. Did you know we have a member among us, Suzanne Wilson, who goes to the DeKalb County Jail and teaches law classes to inmates each week? Did you know this? Now, Suzanne is interested in establishing a jail ministry, and she and I hope this is something we can launch together in the coming year at UUCA, so we can all be a part of this in our community. It is Mother's Day in 2019. We have mothers who are interned at our border, isolated from their children. We have mothers who are jailed unfairly and without bail, and we have mothers who are incarcerated for years without support to sustain their relationships to their children. For the collective liberation of all of us, let us create a different world. Let us work to find ways to keep families together, because that is how we honor the worth and dignity of mothers. So, yes, take your mama out today. Hug her and love her and show her you care. Take a moment to mourn your mother if you have lost her, to honor her. Take a moment to honor all the complicated ways mothers show up in our lives. But take heart in this. We are here to mother to each other. And we cannot do that in isolation. There is something you can do to free a mother in Atlanta today. There is someone in your life who needs a little more nurturing, and you can mother that person. You can let them know you will fight for their safety and security. Let them know you will show up for them. Maybe that person is you, and someone's got to show up for you. It is time to mother one another. Mother's Day began with a dream of international peace, inspired by mothers and in the name of mothers who didn't want to raise soldiers but citizens. May we hold fast to that dream and remember Julia Ward Howe's demand each year, and let it inspire us in a world yet unseen. She proclaimed, "In the name of womanhood and of humanity, I earnestly ask that a General Congress of Women without limit of nationality may be appointed and held to promote the alliance of the different nationalities, the amicable settlement of international questions, the great and general interests of peace." Let us mother to that dream. May it be so. Amen.